everyone, and welcome to this Tea and Learn session about load panels. This will be a first of two sessions because there's a lot to talk about with load panels, and today I will explain to you how to enter them and what their different properties are. In the next session we will talk about the load distribution methods and how to select the elements to which the load will be distributed. Alright, so let's get started with this Tea and Learn session. So, load panels, what are they? They are elements in your model which have no stiffness, they have no weight, but they are simply there to distribute some loadings that you will put on them to the supporting elements underneath. So that's their only purpose, to distribute loading. Okay, you can find load panels under the structure menu. And here you find already the option load panels, and you see that you have 4 different types of load panels to choose from. For now, let's just choose one of them, accept these properties, and to enter in your load panels you can simply click on whatever nodes you need, or you can use the geometry options above the command line. Okay? When you're done with creating your geometry, you press escape and the load panel is entered into your model. Alright, I had already defined one and put a load on it just to show you what the different types of load panels mean. So let me select this one, and here you can see that even when I've drawn my panel, I still have the option to choose between the different type of panels. Okay, so the first type is to panel nodes, and when I generate the load, you will see that the load that I put on my panel will get distributed to the 4 nodes, corner nodes of my load panel. So that's the first type of option. The second says it again in its name. It will be a panel that transfers the load to its edges. So when I generate the load, you see that the load gets generated on the edges of the panel. And then the third option I have here is a panel that will transfer load to the edges and the beams. So here also the beams which are inside the load panel will get loaded, just like this. Alright, and then you see that in the tree there is a 4th type of load panels, which is a special one. It's a load panel that's not just a load panel, but it will also draw in beams together with the load panel. So at first you have the same options as the normal panel, but just below you can choose some beam layout. Here we have chosen to have a layout defined by the interdistance of the beams and have 1 meter in between each beams. Alright, and when I enter this panel into my model, you see I can choose also a cross section for my beams, and a panel is drawn in together with a series of beams. Very easy. These beams, they are just like normal beams. They will have a weight, they will have a stiffness, so it's the same as if I were drawing in beams and then putting a load panel on top, only this goes just a little bit faster. Alright. And then finally I have some last item on the load panels, which is the possibility to define an opening in your panel. For example, a window or whatever, where there is no load that will be transferred. Okay, I simply select the opening. Maybe I can use one of the shapes from the command line, like set a circle load. Alright, yeah, never mind that. And I get an opening in my panel. There will be no load on this opening. It will not distribute any loads as well at the level of the opening. Okay, that's it about entering. Let's have a look more in detail to the properties of the load panel. So the first one we've already discussed. It's the panel type, where I can choose which type of distribution of the loading I want. Let's go for the rest of this tutorial with the edges and beams option. And then the second thing I can change is the load transfer direction. So I can either choose to have the load be transferred in all directions, or according to the X or Y direction in the local axis of the panel. So this would be a one-way carrying load panel. So let's choose, for example, the X direction. Now I see that only the beams perpendicular to this X direction get some loading on them. Maybe the Y direction will be a little bit clearer. Alright, so only the beams in the Y direction perpendicular to the Y direction get loaded. Okay, we see that this final beam, the inclined one, is not getting any loads, and this is because of this option just below it, the max angle for transfer. So this option is only available when you choose either the X or Y direction for load transfer. And the max angle for transfer, what does it mean? Well, if you choose one-way carrying slab, only the beams perpendicular to the load transfer direction or with maximum an angle of 5 degrees from this direction will get loaded. For our inclined beam, this is more than 5 degrees, so it doesn't get loaded. But if I change this one to, let's say, 30 degrees, this angle will be smaller and I will get some load as well on this beam. So this is a question that we get a lot at the support department. Why doesn't my beam get loaded? And generally it's because of this maximum angle option. Okay, next thing we can do is we can change the local axis system of the panel. For example, if the one-way carrying direction is not exactly coinciding with the local axis of my panel, I can change the way my local axis work. There are a lot of options for this. I will not explain them all to you because we don't have this much time. But maybe the easiest is just to enter an angle for my local axis and my load transfer direction, as you can see by the little arrow, gets shifted by this angle. But of course you can use all of these options as well. Okay. Next thing we have is the swap orientation option. So what does it do? Well, the load panel also has an Z-axis direction. Generally, it's in the positive direction of the axis from your global coordinate system. But maybe sometimes we would want to change it. For example, for loads that are defined according to the local axis of the load panels, if I swap this orientation, you will see that my load gets swapped as well. Mainly this option is used for 3D wind generation, because for 3D wind generation the Z-axis of your load panel should always be pointing to the outside of your building for proper generation of the wind loads. So this is why you can use this option. Of course you can choose a layer for your load panel and activate it for 3D wind. When we activate this, we will get wind data, and when you launch the 3D wind generator, there will be some wind generated on your load panel. Alright. What I do want to talk also a little bit about the action of table edit geometry, which is sometimes a pretty handy option just to check if the coordinates of all the nodes are alright, or maybe to adapt easily the geometry of your load panel. And then one final thing I want to talk about in this Learn video is a way to show, after the loads have been generated, to show the original load, because that's sometimes something that's a bit confusing. Like for example, I had a load of 1 kilonewton per square meter on this panel and I would like to change it to 2, but when I select these generated loads, there is no properties to adapt. So I would like to see the original load, and there are two ways to do this. One way is the way I generally use. You can delete one of the generated loads and then automatically the original load will reappear. You can change it to -2. For example, I can select back my load panel. Oh, sorry. And generate the loads again. Other thing you can do is right click in your screen and go to set view parameters for all. Then we go to the loads and masses tab, and on the display loads you will find the options for generators, and here I can choose to either show the original load, show the generated loads, or show both at the same time. Let's go for that one. Okay, and now I can both see how my loading is distributed and what the original load was, and if needed, adapt the values. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to this T and Learn session. There will be a second one about load panels as well, and I hope you will watch it. Have a nice day. Alright, bye.